We are now joined by Ben Cartlidge, a man who has judged fights in KSW, Cage Warriors, Bellator, and the UFC, going back more than a decade across some of those promotions. Ben, to you, what is the biggest misconception that you see by media, by fans, when we are publicly scoring fights on our social media accounts?
I think that's changed quite a lot when we had the revisions to the criteria in late 2016. The old adages of takedowns win rounds, when people were getting late takedowns, of forward pressure winning rounds, you don't see as much of that now. And obviously, because of how well the revised criteria is written, really, it kind of the older document was a lot more vague in certain sections, and the way the new document's put together, it's a lot better. But I mean, there still are areas of media and fans that you do see who do think that automatically the person who's on top might be winning, or automatically the person who's coming forward is winning. And well, that just isn't the case if you obviously if you read through the criteria and understand how these fights are actually judged.
Where does the wider interpretation of what constitutes a 10-8 round fit into those misconceptions? Do we largely have it right, or do you see us still having some room to grow?
I see it. I think it's still kind of changing and evolving. Really, I think the greatest thing with the updated criteria was the fact that the 10-8 section itself went into a specific amount of detail with the 3Ds, with damage, with dominance, and duration. With it gives judges a legitimate marker rather than before, where it just said a 10-8 round is one where a fighter wins by a large margin, which is quite vague and open to interpretation. Now judges have a lot of things that they can a lot of metrics that they can specifically kind of tie themselves to, really. So if you are making a case for a 10-8, you can say, well, there is two of these here, or there is three of these here. And at that point, you have a cast iron kind of case. And that's the thing, really. I mean, it's about understanding more than it is about agreeing, because we're in the sport of disagreements. And there's three of us there judging that fight, and we're all sitting in different seats. And there's so many rounds that are so super close, where we're talking maybe one strike is a differential. And if it's I can see it and the other judge can't, we might go different ways on that. And that's the deal with how the sport works. But misunderstanding is the problem, because if we don't understand how these fights are judged, then the arguments are kind of invalid, really.
Well, Ben, I want you to take us into that chair with you. How do your nerves compare relative to the stakes of the fight for which you're scoring?
I think one of the most important things from my point of view, my judging kind of journey, really, was that I was able to work regionally a lot. And I was able to work for a lot of shows on the UK scene before I graduated to working internationally with shows like Cage Warriors and shows like KSW. The great thing is that the mindset of a judge has to stay the same. It's always red corner and blue corner. And you never know where you're going to be and what you're kind of going to be doing when you sit in that chair. And that's the great thing about it, really. The mindset has to stay the same. You're aware of the fact that maybe more people are watching a certain fight. Earlier on in my career, when I did work a bit more regionally, I did a UFC show in Japan. And then the week after, I did a show in a leisure center in the UK in front of 400 people, and it was red corner versus blue corner both times. That's the way you have to approach it. But you're aware of the fact that for the bigger events with the bigger fights, there's a different overall feeling of the atmosphere and kind of the event. But your protocol as a judge and your methodology as a judge remains the same, irrespective of whether you're in a massive arena with 58,000 people, or if you're in a small venue with a couple of hundred. It has to.
How often do you go back and rewatch fights that you've scored to almost assess your interpretation of that fight?
All the time. Every single time. Every event that I do, the next couple of days I'll spend rewatching fights if they've gone the distance. If there's been people talking about it quite a lot, or even if they haven't. I mean, I do it all the time with fights I'm not even scoring. That's the great thing about being a judge. Like, it doesn't. If you're a referee, you can stay sharp and hone your craft by refereeing, by the act of doing that. And with the problems we've had, obviously with COVID and the restrictions, that's been difficult to do. And it's not like before referees would go to clubs and maybe referee it into clubs or sparring to get those kind of extra rounds in. For me, kind of to stay sharp, it doesn't. I don't really need anything other than my PC, a notepad, and a cup of tea. Really, I can just kind of I can just sit and pick some fights out and kind of do that, and I do that all the time, most days, to be honest with you. It's just you never fall out of that mindset then. And that was why I did a show in March with Cage Warriors last year, and then I didn't work till Fight Island, so I had 4 months off, which is unheard of, really. I'm usually doing between 22 and 28 shows a year, so I'm out a lot. But I found that constantly judging, constantly reviewing, kept me kind of sharp. And indeed, when we were on Fight Island quarantining, 2 of my friends who were also judges from the UK, we'd have daily Zoom calls where we'd pick a fight each. We'd watch the fight between us, and then we'd take it in turns to kind of score rounds and give our kind of methodology. And it helped us. It helped us a lot going into those events.
That, for me, gives me 2 follow-ups, and I'll just go one at a time. How does the perspective change how you would score a fight being seated cage side versus watching via broadcast?
You've got kind of one go at it when you're sitting kind of cage side. Everything's different. And that's the other thing that you said at the start. I made a great point about misconceptions. When I sit in that particular seat, there's nobody. There might be millions of people watching this event. The only person who can see what I'm seeing is me, and that's the set of information that I've got to interpret that. When I'm watching it at home, it's a lot more relaxed. I can kind of stop if I need to. I can do different things. But when you sit in that chair, it's completely different. It's like nothing else exists, really. It can't do. Your only focus is on what's unfolding and trying to cross correlate that with the criteria and the information that you've got in your head. It's different, but the process is similar, but the external factors are worlds apart.
Well, in any performance industry, like I stuff up interviews all the time. When you go back and rewatch fights that you've scored, even ones perhaps that didn't go the distance, but you're maybe leaning one way, how often do you feel you got it wrong?
I think, to be brutally honest with you, I never put a scorecard in that I can't understand. I never put a card in that I think to myself, I don't understand why I've done that. I could watch a fight back differently because somebody might have said to me, well, maybe I had it this way. And I'll watch a fight to see if I can see what they saw, I'll look at it from a different kind of set of eyes, really. But understanding is the key. I'm always able to find the score through the path that I took through the criteria. And at that point, like I say, the understanding's there. We can make arguments about, you can say red corner and I can say blue corner, but in super close rounds, you've got a good case and I've got a good case. It might just be one thing that I see that you don't, or vice versa, So that as long as we have the understanding of how those scores are reached, then that's undoubtedly the most important thing.
And it does feel like there is a spectrum of clarity in any fight. Sometimes it seems pretty obvious who may have won. Other times you say, gosh, I would hate to be one of those judges sitting around the octagon. When you are one of those judges and it's a close fight in the closing stages, be honest, is there any part of you that says, geez, I kind of hope red corner or blue corner, one of them finds a way to finish this and not require the scrutiny that we are bound to receive?
The funny thing is that when it happens, you're powerless to do anything about it. You have to kind of roll with it and work things out on the fly. And I'll give you an example. I did Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya for the middleweight world championship in Melbourne, and there was 58,000 people there. If you go back and watch that first round, Robert Whittaker is landing the better strikes for the bulk of the fight, and there's around about 10 seconds left. And Israel Adesanya hits him clean with a great shot, puts him down, goes to follow in, and then Mark Goddard, one of the best referees in the world, by the way, comes in and the round ends. Now, imagine the fact that I've got 10 seconds to process all that. I've got 10 seconds to work out if that piece of offense, it's obviously the most significant, but is it enough to kind of tip the scales, Is it enough to take it from one fighter to another fighter? And I've got 10 seconds sitting in that chair with 58,000 people live and maybe millions watching at home, like I can't describe to you what that feels like. You know, I sound a bit like Quint talking about the Indianapolis, but it's true. Like it's such an intense kind of feeling, but it's the greatest job in the world, and I love doing it. And kind of as much as it's intense, like you learn a lot about yourself in moments like that as an official.
Well, now you've piqued my curiosity, because I was one of those people among the 58,000. We were there covering it for ESPN,
Oh,
and I
awesome.
had said after the fight that that round was closer than we're going to remember it being, because Rob was dominant so early. So when you were sitting cage side, did you go 10-9 for Izzy or 10-9 for Whittaker?
10-9 Adesanya, we all did. And yeah, that's the thing.
I tend to agree, but again, you just piqued my curiosity. Ben, before we let you go, I know you are a human being with hobbies and passions. You're not somebody who sits in a red corner and blue corner. So what are some of those passions that you have outside of the cage side periphery?
Outside of judging fights, I obviously train like or kind of 99% of us judges do. To be honest, I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You probably see I got a bit of a mark on my nose. I went training this morning, and I said to the guys, like, please don't, just be careful of my face. I hate saying that, but I said that, and then I ended up getting like a bit of a shot in it. so kind of that's that. But yeah, I train Jiu-Jitsu, and I play quite a lot of old video games, really. And I don't know, I love spending time with my wife and my dogs. It's kind of wholesome kind of stuff, really.
So what is your YouTube channel or your Twitch stream? Where can we watch you?
Oh, well, fantastic. My YouTube channel is One Credit Classics, and I play video games from the 80s and 90s, and then try and beat them without continuing, or in some cases kind of without dying. And I do all that live on YouTube. And it's funny, like I make jokes about it all the time, but if you can kind of take video games from that era and deconstruct them so you can kind of do that, a lot more things in life seem a bit easier.
Ben, we appreciate the candor, the clarity, the clarification, and honestly making us all smarter MMA viewers through this time today. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best going forward.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.